Hello, everyone. I'm Sally Knott, and we're going to talk about being triggered. Look, we've all been triggered. Let's face it, we probably all have the t-shirt we can all wear that says, I'm the most triggered. But here's the thing. As a QHHT practitioner, there's one thing I can tell you that is basically a common thread through the people that I worked with. And that is being triggered is not necessarily a bad thing. But here's the thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing because what it does, if we are being triggered by either a politician, a spouse or a partner, a friend, a workplace environment, whoever, if we find ourselves being triggered, what we have to do is be brave enough for those of us on the ascension path. Now, maybe this isn't for everybody. I get that. Maybe you just want to wallow around being triggered. But for those of us who kind of over being triggered, understand there's a spiritual component to this. And that is being triggered is part of your inner guidance system. Just as every emotion that you experience is part of the inner guidance system to help you navigate through your life experience. Being triggered is just one of those navigation apparatus, if you will. When you are being triggered by somebody that you perceive that you don't like or that you like, let's just take, for example, I have a very dear friend, and she and I are on opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to politics. And we both used to be really triggered by, she by my candidate and me by her candidate. And we were just like, okay, let's just agree to disagree and move on. Until one day, we were both sort of had the opportunity to take a look at this and say, look, do we want to spend our lives, not being able to talk about whatever we want to talk about and not be triggered? What is really going on? What is the spiritual component of all this? And so we did our little deep dive in our little juju world and in our hypnosis and all that. We kind of built this narrative out, and it matches with what we find on our QHHT forums when we're talking to other practitioners. And that is being triggered is discovering something that is so unbearable for us to look at within ourselves that's being highlighted. It's much like judgment. I've talked about that in other videos. This is a little bit different, though. So let me go down this path. So with my friend, her issue with my candidate that I like is that my candidate is way too arrogant, self-centered, this, that, and the other. To which my reply is, what candidate for any place, whether it's president or city hall, doesn't have an air of arrogance about it. So what else is going on? Maybe it takes that level of arrogance to get you out the door, to be brave enough to go state your case and then know that half the people are going to be against you, making stuff up against you, and taking what you say out of context, rearranging it and throwing it out there and getting more people to dislike you wherever you are, right or left. It doesn't really matter. You're just candidate A and candidate B, and you're out duking it out, and people get behind A and people get behind B, and then all this misinformation gets going on, and you're just like, who knows what's really going on at that point. And then at the same time, you're getting upset because of this other thing going on that may not even be going on. So when I sat down with her, I said, okay, let me draw a picture. I took a piece of paper, I drew a number 6. I said to my friend, what is this? She goes, it's a 9. I said, I'm telling you it's a 6. She goes, Sally, that's a 9. I said, I'm telling you it's a 6. And then I turn it around and she goes, that's a 6. Right? So a lot of why we're triggered doesn't, if we would just take a moment, take in a deep breath, and sort of say, is this something worth being upset about? Much of what people are being triggered on is just the perception of what is before them. But if they would just take the time, just to, even if you had to digress it to the most basic form, is like she and I talking about number 6 and number 9, if I would just take a deep breath and say, do I need to prove my point? The only way I'm going to prove my point is if she's willing to take a look at that different perspective. If she had just turned her head and said, no, I'm not going to look at that, well, guess what? What's the point? So I'm going to spend my energy being upset because she is unwilling to do the thing I think she needs to do. So what is that telling me about myself and my ability to ascend? Well, here's the thing. If you boil all that away, what it comes down to is, one, you can ask yourself, is this something for me to be so upset about? Is this going to matter the moment I take my last breath? Is that I had to prove my point, because if I don't, it affects A or B or C. Everybody's going to come to their own conclusions based on their own life experiences. Now, my friend was viewing my candidate as somebody so unlikable, and I was doing the same thing. I'm not going to just throw her up against the wall and say, well, I'm so perfect. I'm not. I did the same thing. I think we all do it. And so as we're placing our people up there, we begin to watch the bigger media paint pictures for us, and we gravitate toward the narrative that supports our belief system about that person. Now, if you want to take that a step further, this is what you need to do. If you are one of those persons who, no matter what it is, whether it's politics, religion, partners, friendships, whatever, if you are finding yourself that you need to prove a point to somebody, I'm going to challenge you to take a deep breath and ask yourself this question. If you are seeing that particular flaw in somebody, and my friend, she was calling my guy very arrogant, and that he was a narcissist, right? And that his narcissism, she knew the narcissism because she had a parent with narcissism, and she saw those same qualities in my candidate as this flawed parent or parents that she had. Now, that will support your belief system. Let me stop right there, because this part's important. Aristotle said, and this goes back to the Greek times, give me a child until the age of 7, I will show you the man. Well, that means that whatever that child is observing is in his environment, he will begin to develop belief systems based on that. This is why you have generational people, going from child to child to child to child, that you are a lifelong and your family's been generational long, fill in the blank, religion, politics, whatever. There are always going to be the outliers and the those who rebel and break away from all that, and that's perfectly fine. But for those of us trying to understand the bigger concept of why we start to become triggered in something, my friend had a very bad, horrible experience growing up, traumatized as a child. And so when she began to see the same characteristics through her purview, her filters, her biases, based in something she was programmed to think and believe to get her through her environment up until the age of 7, she began to see those same qualities in this particular candidate. And anytime that any negative story would come up about this person, she would say, there you go, Sally. There you go, Sally. She wouldn't do the deep dive and listen to the candidate. She chose to take what was said about that candidate and based because of her belief system through how she was conditioned as a child, began to come forward and formulate this opinion about somebody else. And anytime he would get out there, she would just, bam, explode. I would do it too. I mean, because my situation was different, because it doesn't, your biases and belief systems don't always come from, you know, at the age of 7, oftentimes it does, but there can be other outliers that influence it. I'm talking in her particular case, and this may or may not be your case. I don't know. I don't know. But the point is, you have trapped emotional energy that needs to be let go so you can hopefully get to the point where you're not being in programs, so you're not being conditioned. And so you can actually begin to look at everything from a 30,000-foot view. Now, having said all of that, once we were both challenged into saying, okay, I'm saying this about your candidate, and you're saying this about my candidate. Let's be honest with ourselves and say, what is going on within us that is causing us to be triggered by the person we know is really a bad person? And so we had to sit with that. That's a tough thing to do when you are so rooted in a belief system that my person's bad or your person's bad. Sorry, my phone rings all the time. When you're so rooted in that, it's hard to let that go. It is hard to say, I might have been wrong, or I might have misjudged, or I might have, whatever. And so when we go to the 6 and 9, what we're both saying to each other is that we have to shift our perspective. And are we both brave enough to look in the mirror and say, what is going on within me that causes me to feel that visceral response? And 2, are we brave enough to look at it from a different perspective? So that was our challenge to each other. And that was a really good exercise, because what I learned about myself were things I was like, oh, you know what? I thought I addressed that and I did not address it. And so I had my own programs, my own belief systems that I had to get cleared out. Now, for me, I just do my own energy healing on myself. I do have other people that I do work with and that also help me along the way. I also helped my friend doing a QHHT session on her. Now, that was very interesting because we work together so much. She has a keyword, we put her down, she goes really quick. She had to admit to herself the thing that she kept saying about my guy was that he was very narcissistic. And what she said was, in her higher self, I am the narcissist. So when you begin to peel away, you begin to, that's a tough thing to say about yourself, to admit to yourself, I am the narcissist. That is a really tough thing to do. And I commend her for her bravery. And even if it was just between her and I, the fact that she just, said it, but she did it, through her higher self, this is something that I need to overcome. This is what I need to recognize within myself. So as I began to understand that I am the narcissist, what that does is, and did for her, once she became aware that she was doing this, and yeah, I could look at her and say, yeah, she's got narcissistic tendencies, but who of us doesn't, I put on makeup just to do this video because I don't want to scare anybody, but that's my own vanity because, do I really care? I guess in some way I do. So I guess there's always that like spectrum of narcissism, right? She's a kind person, but she was look at me kind of a person too. since we've done that QHHT session, she is gone completely 180. She is not the person who wants people to look at her. She's more of, what can I do to help you to evolve and grow? And that has been a huge expansion for her, because in her field of work, it has made her expand so mind-blowing beyond anything she imagined she can do. Now, is she on board with my candidate? No, she's not on board with my candidate, and that's okay. And she just may just decide that's not her guy or girl or whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is, the thing that was triggering her has now been lifted from her, because she had to recognize that the thing that she was calling out and getting angry at my person for was that he had narcissism to the point it just made her angry that anybody would be so dumb as to follow him or her. We'll just leave it at that. And but now when she sees my candidate, she's not triggered. She's not triggered. She's just like, oh, okay, well, it'll be what it'll be. You know, there is almost no emotion to it. So that is what is so cool about doing energy clearing, the what I do here, and or even doing a beyond QHHT or a QHHT session. So we can talk about the beyond QHHT. That's where you stay at home. We put you in the lighter levels. It's a different technique. It's not associated with DoloresCannon, but it works really, really well. We can also do a full QHHT with you, or if you don't have 5 hours to dedicate to go into, a guided meditation to release some of this stuff, and maybe it worked. We can also release a lot of the stuff just doing energy healing over Zoom. So there's a lot can be done. You don't have to stay stuck in it. You don't have to stay mad. But the point being is, if you are finding yourself triggered by something, take a moment, ask yourself the question, is this going to matter the last moment I take my last breath? And is it highlighting something within myself it's too ugly for me to even look at? And I'm angry about it, but I won't admit that is actually coming from within me. That is a hard thing to do, to look in the mirror. I don't think my friend could have said I'm a narcissist if she had not been in a deep meditative state and then addressed it. But the beautiful thing of it is, it released her. She no longer is triggered by that. So a lot of conditions can play into why we develop certain programs and ideas, assumptions. For her, it went back to when she was a very small child, traumatized, and she began to develop these opinions about people who had, in her mind, certain traits. Now, not all narcissists are bad, obviously. They're just a little bit too into themselves. But who knows? Now, I will say, my situation was a little bit different, but I'm no longer triggered by her candidate either. It's really it's an interesting thing, because one, when you're not triggered, you feel as though the weight of the world has been lifted from your shoulders. You don't feel like you got to go out there and make people understand that your way is the right way, and that you have to butt up against opposition all the time, trying to make people understand that you've got to see things through me, or how about this one? You can't be who you are because how you are triggers me. That's probably a video for another day. So if you're somebody who feels that somebody else has to change so you are not triggered, you're going down the wrong path. I'm just telling you. And if you are doing that, take a deep breath, stop, and think, why are you doing that? Years ago, we used to have kind of a social etiquette. Sometimes we have to police ourselves. Sometimes, just out of respect of somebody else, we just don't talk about certain things. Like my friend and I, we didn't talk politics, but we had a great time on everything else. Now we can talk politics and doesn't trigger us. It's like, okay, yeah, that's fine. And it's such a liberating feeling. I cannot even tell you. It's just something you have to experience yourself. But don't expect somebody else to change for you. Because if you're there, you're not ascended. You are not on the path of ascension. If your opinion is everybody has to change, so you are not triggered, start looking at yourself, look in the mirror, and ask yourself the hard question if you truly, truly want to ascend. And yes, you're going to see things that are ugly about yourself that you're not going to like, but that's okay, because coming into the awareness of is the first step in getting it gone and released and liberated. So I hope you like this video. I hope it makes sense. And I'm sorry for meandering on. I have a tendency to do that. Please give this a thumbs up and share the video with like-minded people if you'd like. That helps a lot, helps the algorithm, and I do appreciate it. And let's get the message out that we want to make sure that everybody is empowered. And that is my goal, is to help everyone see their own power. So you don't have to depend on anybody but yourself from here on out. So let's get together and ignite the superhuman in you. And go to sallyknott.com, go to the homepage, and look at how to dissolve clouds. And I challenge you all, just as I always do in all my videos, get out there and start dissolving clouds. And the reason for that is so you know on a visceral level that whatever you desire through thought, emotion, intention, attention, you create your reality. So if you're going to create your reality, focus on what triggers you and get it healed, because it doesn't need to be. It's just highlighting something within yourself that you refuse to look at. Once you do, that's your liberation point. That's it for now. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a fabulous day.